Welcome back. I want to begin this session with an anomaly. If electronic communication is so powerful and you can live and work anywhere, why do so many people flock to cities? Why do so many young people want to be in cities? Why do the Starbucks fill with young people working, talking, being part of the scene in almost every city in the world? Why do elderly folks throughout the world sit at the entrances to parks to observe the flow of people? Why do farmers markets serve as magnets for neighborhoods when you could just go down to the supermarket and find more varieties of food and get it all on a one-stop basis? What these examples show is that there's an innate desire among people in cities for contact and communication. In fact, we have seen in the last session, electronic media can help people identify the places that they're likely to encounter others and make connections that are played out in real time in space. So are there physical patterns that designers can create in cities that will promote personal contact? And we'll look at some examples and we'll try to infer from those examples what is it that people are really desiring when they're in contact with each other. One of the most popular television shows in the 1980s was Cheers, set in a Boston bar, the Bull and Finch, in the basement of a Beacon Street apartment house. Every week, millions of people tuned into the conversation that occurred in the bar. There was no big plot, only minor dramas, mostly centered on who came through the doors of the bar and who sat next to whom and who delivered the best lines. It was all about conversation and communication. To find such a place today, you might go to the Ace Hotel in New York, a nondescript, modest hotel in the Flatiron District. The lobby is filled with activity, most of it unrelated to the hotel. It has free Wi-Fi and dozens of people drop by to connect with others both electronically and in person. It is hard to find a table that is empty. There is food and, of course, coffee to be purchased and places to go for lunch or dinner nearby. This is a private space that serves as a neighborhood meeting ground. These kinds of spaces were written about by Ray Oldenburg in his book, The Great Good Space. The subtitle is Cafes, Coffee Shops, Bookstores, Bars, Hair Salons, and Other Hangouts at the Heart of a Community. Oldenburg calls such places third places and says that they are as important to the sense of community as homes, which he calls the first place, or workplaces, which he calls the second place. They are the glue that creates the social fabric of a community. And while he mainly discusses indoor spaces such as bars, this is the Bull and Finch in Boston 2 decades after the TV show ended, and people still arrive there expecting to see Sam behind the counter and Norma serving drinks and Norm slouched over the bar. The idea is that there are regulars, and this is part of the attraction. Or barbershops, with the fast-moving conversation of people waiting their turn or just dropping by to get the neighborhood news. Ray Oldenburg sets down some of the characteristics that make third places work, and let's try them out in terms of public spaces as well as private. The first principle is that they have to be neutral ground, not the turf of one group or another. Some spaces are that by definition, as the New England Town Common, which belongs to all and can be used by any. The second principle is that they are accessible to all and a leveler, where all people are equal. Here in Bryant Park in New York, it is an easy move off the street into a tree-shaded environment, with tables for groups, movable chairs that can be put together for two, and benches for people who just want to stop and watch the scene and be ignored. There is no income test for the space. Everybody is welcome. If they promote human interchange, conversation is the main activity. Not the only activity, as we shall see, but being able to strike up a conversation with someone you know or even someone within earshot is really critical. Sidewalk cafes do this marvelously. You can see a friend as you walk by, stop for a word or two, or have an animated conversation with friends while you're having a drink with them. Tables are close enough so you hear conversations on either side. Listening is important to communication. And there are regulars who you know, and you see if you go to a particular place. Some of them have been coming for years, but their games are not organized competitions, but pickup events. They are mainly an excuse to get together and to have a conversation. Third places are a home away from home for many. Public libraries are an important home for people of all ages, and increasingly so, since they now usually have high-speed internet connections and sometimes are the only access for computers for people. But people can gather in twos or threes, speak quietly, and carry on their conversations in the cafe or outdoors after their work is done. This is the great library in Alexandria, Egypt, filled with people every hour it's open. I now go beyond Ray Oldenburg's principles and add things that I've learned in creating places. Third, places need easy entry, not requiring major commitment to use them. One way is to attach them to pathways traveled by many people. Here at Copley Square in Boston, booze selling and promoting things make it easy to stop, or to while away a few minutes, and once you've stopped, you may find a bench or a wall to rest on and then see someone you know and then strike up a conversation. There is no need to make a date to communicate. Most good places also make room for performers as well as spectators. And not all conversation is verbal, or at least conversational. But it helps to have something to comment on with the person next to you, and you may ask how to join the group the next day. Distractions are also important. They can set the mood for a place, as here in Paley Park in New York, where the waterfall screens the street noise. But they also offer something to start the conversation about. What a great waterfall, isn't it? The two most powerful motivators for contact and communication are food and drink. Here in Copenhagen, we see people of all ages enjoying lunch or just a coffee, but most of all in conversation. Communication builds over time through regular transactions. They need not be special occasions. The trip to the market lets you get to know the merchants and others who are regular shoppers. Markets can be great levelers, attracting people from all slices of life. Besides, they often have great food. The best third places are capable of being adapted to your conversational and privacy needs. Here at Herald Square in New York, a median has been converted into an outdoor meeting place. Movable tables and chairs allow you to assemble just the right environment for your conversational needs, or give you privacy if you're alone. When third places are taken over by a group or formalized, they lose much of their value as connectors. Their objective should be ever-changing informal clubs with room for new members. As with this dance group in Suzhou, China, where everybody is welcome and where there's a well-understood protocol about who you can ask to dance with. So let's take a look at two public spaces half a world apart and see how these principles contribute to their success. One is in Harbin, China, and has been created organically, responding to the neighborhood. And second one is in New York, which has been designed with communication and contact in mind. The Harbin space is a modest plaza behind St. Nikolaev's Church at the center of a residential neighborhood. A quick glance might suggest there's not much there. However, it works in ways that realize the principles just mentioned. Along the sidewalks that surround the square are eddies of space, where groups with special interests can gather informally. It is an easy entry for a conversation starter. Here, dog lovers share their prized pets. Some stop for a while, others just say a few words and move on, but they come to know their compatriots. Further along the sidewalk at the entrance to the church, a group of musicians gather to practice. It is not an organized performance, just communication through music. Passers-by stop for a minute, stay longer if they like it, or move along. Others take advantage of the massage therapy it offered at several points along the sidewalk. This gentleman already looks better. The main event is on the plaza itself, where a group of regulars gather to practice their dance movements. There are several such clubs, each with different colored uniforms. They work out several times a week. But they're not exclusive. They welcome others to join in mimicking their movements. Some may enjoy it enough to join the club. For others, it is just enjoyment and exercise. And alongside the square, beside the church, is an outdoor beer garden that attracts still others. Harbin is proud of its beer, and many residents take the pride to heart. Some simply enjoy watching the dance clubs or the passing scene with a glass of brew in hand. And for still others, it is the ballroom dancing that attracts them. At St. Nikolaev Square, you have the feeling that you are in a neighborhood's true third place. But can such a place be designed, or does it need to evolve organically? Rockefeller Park at Battery Park City in New York has evolved into a third place for not only the adjacent residents, but for much of the district of Tribeca. It is the largest new open space in Lower Manhattan and serves many thousands of people living and working nearby. We had the pleasure of designing it and worked hard to incorporate the principles I've just talked about. The plan of Rockefeller Park has three elements. Closest to the neighborhoods are a series of terraces connected to the streets where the people arrive and designed for specific activities. Along the waterfront, there's a promenade and a large series of green spaces designed for multiple purposes. And connecting them all is a long and curving pathway that becomes the main street of the public space. The pathway is the key. As you walk along it, you can sample all the activities in the space and experience many outdoor rooms. On a weekend, the walkway becomes a place to set up games and activities like table tennis, which are open to all. These are wonderful distractions. The terraces are elevated above the walkway just a meter or two, but enough to offer a great prospect of the green spaces and the water beyond. And some of the terraces are equipped to attract and hold regulars. Others offer opportunities for pickup games of basketball or handball. They are deliberately only half courts so they aren't taken over by formal leagues. The children's areas occupy a large terrace and are divided by stages in the development process. Places for toddlers, other areas for testing strength, others for imaginative play, and still others for social play. And of course, the area is a great leveler for parents as well as for children. Beyond the play areas for rambunctious children, there is also a quiet area for conversation and solitude. It is a lunch hour respite for many who work in the adjacent office buildings. And the linear green is intended as a town common, capable of being used for picnics, sunbathing, family outings, informal games, even performances. And despite the pleas by many of the neighbors to dedicate areas for a soccer field and a Little League baseball diamond, we resisted. Cones can define a perfectly reasonable soccer field, and a movable backstop allows a pickup game of softball. But then the common space remains open to all in other times. Rockefeller Park has been voted the most popular park in Manhattan several times. It has become the neighborhood's third place. Many of the environments we've just seen require us to set aside conventions, especially the rigid separation of workplaces and leisure and living, the zoning of cities by income groups, and the one-size-fits-all standard for schools, play areas, and other public facilities. We'll explore this issue more in the next session that's going to focus on mixed-use environments. But the lesson I take away from this session is that the central purpose of a city is creating possibilities for human contact. It's through the chance meetings, the informal alliances, the presence of new kinds of people that cities acquire their economic energy. And this is a subject which Jane Jacobs recognized many years ago in her pioneering book, The Economy of Cities. It took conventional economists 30 years to understand that point. Today, no city can afford to neglect its attraction for people, its ability to promote people being in contact with each other if it wants to grow and thrive. So please join us in the next session, which explores this further by talking about mixed-use environments.